Chapter 1780 A Battle with King Arthur. When Zhang Yi saw the friend request, he subconsciously reached out and stroked the dark silver-colored ring on his right wrist. That cousin of King Arthur had completely transformed into the shape of Zhang Yi at this moment. With this kind of deep hatred, it was impossible for a world-famous powerhouse like King Arthur to ignore it. Even if his relationship with Bowser wasn't much better, he had to fight Zhang Yi even if it was just for the sake of preserving his name and the dignity of the Levant family. Zhang Yi passed the other party's friend request. Soon after, King Arthur's video communication request came through. Zhang Yi sat on the co-pilot of the car, narrowed his eyes at the application and agreed to his connection request. A handsome man with blonde hair appeared in the middle of the screen. His face was as tough as a sword, with clear lines, a circumscribed Chinese character face. The muscles in his face were a bit sunken, and his brow bones were cold and hard as if they had been scraped with a carving knife. His eyes were blue, with a coldness and arrogance. While Zhang Yi sized up King Arthur also stared at Zhang Yi for a long time. After a few seconds, a faint temperatureless smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Chaos, you're the one who killed my brother Bowser, right?" Zhang Yi drooped his eyelids. "Yes." "You want to avenge him?" He didn't bother to explain too much. The Knights of the Round Table had entered Huashu Kingdom's land without permission, and killing Bowser was a justified move. According to them in Britannia, this was called the Castle Law, where the wind and rain could enter and the king would not allow it. Hearing Zhang Yi admit it so directly, the smile at the corner of King Arthur's mouth disappeared. "Indeed." He sighed lightly. "I appreciate your honesty. But having offended the dignity of the Levant family, this matter must come to an end between you and me." He stared at Zhang Yi with a cold gaze. Zhang Yi did not see anger from within his eyes, but only a wave of unoffendable dignity. Bowser was King Arthur's clan brother, and the relationship between the two of them was not considered to be that close. Otherwise, he wouldn't have followed Lancelot to the southwest region in the first place, but would have followed King Arthur around. King Arthur was not very concerned about his death. He believed in the law that strength was king, and Bowser's death on the battlefield was a knight's honor, and there was no grudge to speak of for dying with poor strength. However, what Zhang Yi did was intolerable to him. Not only did he kill Bowser, he also made Bowser's corpse into a weapon, which was something King Arthur could not tolerate. The chivalry that they believed in was not this kind of insult to their enemy's corpse. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes, his gaze equally cold. "What do you want?" King Arthur was a world-famous powerhouse, and his name was also the loudest in Europe, and it was known that he was the man who had led several trips to the territory of undersea civilizations and returned in one piece. His strength was definitely not to be underestimated. However, this did not mean that Zhang Yi would be afraid of him. It was really because Zhang Yi had seen too many strong men, and his mind had been sharpened long ago. King Arthur said, "I will head to Fremons. But you needn't worry, I won't make a move against you until the mechanical civilization invasion incident in Fremons is resolved. But after the war night is over, I hope you can fight me, in the spirit of a knight, in a fair battle." King Arthur's words had caused a trace of admiration to rise in Zhang Yi. It was unavoidable for human civilized nations to have disagreements with each other. But nowadays, between human civilizations, there were no wars of death and destruction, only conquest. But when faced with an enemy of the entire human civilization, those who were truly strategic would temporarily put aside their personal preconceptions and unite. Zhang Yi said, "If you are able to live until that time, I will gladly accept your challenge." King Arthur laughed. "Don't worry, if one of us will die in this crusade, it definitely won't be me." Heh. Zhang Yi smiled faintly and ended his conversation with King Arthur. He leaned back in his seat, and although he had won the war just after arriving in Fremons, his mood was not relaxed at all. This was because he realized that the mechanical civilization hadn't really taken a shot at humanity at all. Winning was winning. But the team he led was one of the most powerful mutant forces in Huashu Kingdom. Nowadays, Putting aside Ho-Tua's earthbound spirit ability, he was the strongest combat force that could be deployed. What's more, he was accompanied by Liang Yu, Flower, Deng Shintong, and Lu Karen's Snow Owl Mecha, which meant 5-level Epsilon combatants. Just like that, it took almost half an hour to finish resolving an entire mechanical army. This was still based on a few conditions. First, that weird humanoid creature Alexei had spoken of didn't appear. Obviously, that was an existence that was much harder to deal with than a super-large mechanical life form. Secondly, the primary goal of the mechanical civilization was currently not to annihilate the human race, and there was no telling how brutal the war would become once they started to aim at slaughtering the human race. Thirdly, and the point that made Zhang Yi even more annoyed, these mechanical civilizations were obviously searching for something, and that thing, once it really showed up, could bring a huge disaster to Fremons, or even the entire world of human civilization. Zhang Yi raised his head, and although he could not see the distant sky, he could still feel that there was some powerful and terrifying existence that was looking at the movements of the planet's surface through those 369 huge polyhedron monitors. This thought caused an oppressive and fearful feeling to surface in Zhang Yi's heart. He understood that he appeared to be very strong nowadays, but compared to the truly powerful dominators of this world, he was still very weak. Those powerful existences of the underground civilization, White Dragon and Hades' Gatekeeper, need not be mentioned. Even just fighting the King Nash's prince and the 3 pillar gods of the Neon Underground civilization, he might not be able to win, and would only be able to defend himself. This world was still filled with countless mysteries, as well as dangers. Zhang Yi closed his eyes. Let's go, head to the next target location. Deng Shintong's voice rang out in the communication channel, but on Fremon's side, didn't he tell us to head to Samarin City? Zhang Yi snorted. I said I'd go, but I didn't say when we'd go over. It will be a while before the people from the other countries and organizations arrive, so until then, let's gather some more intelligence while there is no one to interfere. The Far East region covered a very large area. It was close to the Arctic Circle, it was freezing cold all year round, and after the end of the world, it had even turned into a virtually uninhabited and extinct land. And on this day, above the gray and heavy sky, 2 huge transport planes flew in and stopped in front of a huge deep pit. The transports slowly landed on the ground, the hatches opened, and a group of soldiers armed to the teeth and with robust bodies walked out. They were wearing camouflage combat uniforms with gray and white stripes, and in the position of their chests, they had the blood symbol of sharp claw scratches. This was one of Columbia's most powerful mutant special elite forces, Able. It was on par with the Sea Wolves Commando amongst the Navy, and every warrior amongst the unit was a powerful mutant that had been modified by Columbia's genetic technology. It was the masterpiece of that famous madman, Professor George da Vinci. 30 soldiers stepped out of the transporter and then dissected the sides as if they were waiting for the appearance of a certain big shot. Shortly afterward, 2 small white short legs stepped out from the hatch and walked down the gangway with a bounce. Although his legs weren't long enough, he still tried to make a serious look and looked at the surrounding Able soldiers and nodded. Well, good. Very good performance, man. He was only about 1 meter 6 in height, his body was as white as snow, and what was even more surprising was that he had the head of a dog. The limbs of a dog, and the body of a dog. That's right, he was indeed a dog. A snow-white Labrador. But he was just like wearing a combat uniform, walking on his hind legs like a human, and speaking fluent English. The soldiers on either side of him straightened their backs, unable to see their expressions clearly because of the masks on their faces, which left no way of knowing if they would find the scene comical. And it was only after Labrador stepped out that Newton's form followed. Brian, we didn't come over here to ski. You mustn't forget the professor's orders to do as I say on this visit. Newton walked over and commanded the Labrador seriously with his head lowered. The white Labrador in front of him had a cool name, Brian Griffin. The name came from its owner, the mad Professor da Vinci. That's right, it was da Vinci's test subject. A madman who liked to experiment on human beings. After studying countless kinds of mutant creatures, he finally put his evil hands on his cute dog, and finally made the dog like a human being, so said Brian himself. Seeing the serious look on Newton's face, Brian spread his arms out in a persuasive manner. Hey, Newton. I don't think you need to look like that. We came all this way, we can't just think about work. We can think of it as a vacation. He suddenly looked left and right, his eyes excited. I hear they have really great Siberian sled dogs here. I can't wait to pick up one of the chicks here. Newton held up his glasses and said coldly, not every dog is like you, with modified genes that can carry the damn cold. Even those sled dogs either froze to death or were made into roast meat by the Fremons. Brian's eyes suddenly grew dim. You're right. You humans are just too rough on dogs, even in the end times, to turn your best friends into food. Damn it, I swear if we're ever stuck somewhere hypnosis and there's no food, I won't hesitate to bite your ass off. Newton hugged his arms. That's for later too. And right now, you have to do everything I say. Brian thought about what his master, Professor Da Vinci, had told him to do, and irritably hugged his arms as well. Well, damn you guys. You've taken my only soft spot. Let's see what we can do. Newton turned toward the front. There was a deep dark pit so huge that it would cause phobias. First of all, we must find out what exactly is underneath these deep pits. Only by understanding the purpose of those mechanical life forms can we effectively find a means to deal with them. In the next 2 days, Zhang Yi, under Ling's guidance, ran through all the locations in the entire Far East region where the incident had happened before. However, he never encountered the mechanical legions again. He only saw the entire Far East Earth that had been dug up with thousands of holes. They were digging up the earth, as if they wanted to bring something out from the ground. However, Zhang Yi and the others were not without any gains. The Far East region was rich in resources: coal, oil, ores, natural gas. There were simply too many resources, and Zhang Yi did not waste any of them, helping to collect them all. Anyway, Fremons only had a population of a few million people nowadays, so they couldn't use that many resources. It was a complete waste. Zhang Yi was happy to help his neighbors with their wasteful troubles. Although they did not encounter any more mechanical legions, Zhang Yi and the others were not completely unproductive. They organized all the tracks that the mechanical legion had acted on and formed a three-dimensional map, from which they summarized the patterns of the mechanical legion's actions. The very first area was in the Far East, but nowadays, it is slowly spreading towards the west and north, and a few days ago, Karen City, which is also the western region of the dependent Hualien gang that is located in the European plate, was attacked. According to the intelligence Fremons provided earlier, they showed up on a small scale half a year ago, and only in the last month have they become more active. It just happens to dovetail with our war with the Wulwan Empire. As if Zhang Yi understood something, he said to Deng Shintong and Yang Xinxin as they said, the Far East region, close to Washu Kingdom. Previously, in the Northeast region, Northwest region, and Xinjiang region, wars between high-level mutants had broken out. So I think it's highly likely that this was influenced by that war. The energy fluctuations that were generated gave the wrong signals to the mechanical civilization. But their range of activity, again, is limited to Fremons. That is to say, they are certain that their target is underneath Fremons, they just can't accurately discern the location. Zhang Yi gave his speculation. However, in that case, it also meant that the target object of the mechanical civilization might not be in the Far East region. Would a substantial energy fluctuation cause the underground civilization to go on alert? Deng Shintong held his chin and frowned, as if he had thought of something. Yang Xinxin said softly at this time, the Great Tungu's explosion, as well as the Chernobyl incident. The Great Tungu's explosion was an unsolvable event that occurred in Fremon's history. Hundreds of years ago, before the weapon, Reaper of Love, had been invented, an explosion that could be described as terrifying and covering an extremely wide area occurred there. The light of the explosion illuminated even nearby kingdoms. As for the Chernobyl incident, it was also a huge accident that happened here more than 60 years ago. Although there had been many explanations for its explosion later on, it was still unimaginable that an accident like that would happen given the national power of Fruman's predecessor at the time, as well as the importance attached to the Chernobyl project.